Jake Martinez wiped the sweat from his forehead as he watched the morning sun rise over New Eden. The golden light spread across endless fields of wheat and corn that stretched to the horizon. He stood on the porch of the main administration building, drinking his coffee, and checking the daily reports on his tablet. Everything looked normal, just like it had for the past 12 years. The farming settlement of New Eden was home to about 8,000 people. They lived in small houses scattered between the fields, with a few larger buildings in the center of town. There was a school, a medical center, a general store, and the big grain processing plant that hummed day and night. Most people worked in the fields or in the plant, turning the crops into food that would be shipped to other worlds. Lisa Thompson walked up the steps to join Jake on the porch. She carried her own tablet and wore the same kind of simple work clothes that everyone else wore. Her hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her boots were dusty from walking through the fields. "Morning harvest numbers look good," she said, settling into the chair next to Jake. "The wheat in Sector 7 is ready for cutting. Corn in Sectors 3 and 4 needs another week." Jake nodded and made notes on his tablet. "What about the water levels in the eastern fields?" "All good. The irrigation system is working perfectly. No problems with the pumps or the distribution lines." Lisa sipped her coffee and looked out at the fields. "Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to live on one of those big city worlds. All those people, all that noise and rushing around." "This is better," Jake said. "Quiet, peaceful, good work that matters." A small transport ship flew overhead, heading toward the landing pad near the grain plant. Jake and Lisa watched it land and unload supplies. The pilot waved at them before taking off again. It was the same routine every few days. Supplies came in, processed food went out down in the fields. Workers were already starting their day. Some drove large farming machines between the rows of crops. Others walked through the fields, checking for problems with the plants or the irrigation lines. Children played in the schoolyard before classes started. Everything was normal and quiet. What the workers in the fields did not know was that sensors buried deep in the soil were doing more than just monitoring crop conditions. They were also watching the skies for ships that might be more than just supply transports. The grain processing plant did more than just process grain. And many of the people walking through the fields were not really farmers at all. Jake finished his coffee and stood up. "I need to check on the grain plant." The night shift reported some issues with the main processing unit. "I'll come with you," Lisa said. "I want to look at the power consumption reports." They walked down the main street of New Eden. People were opening their shops and getting ready for another day of work. Mrs. Kelly was sweeping the front of her general store. Dr. Brown was walking toward the medical center. Everything looked exactly like a normal farming town. The grain processing plant was the largest building in New Eden. It stood 3 stories tall and took up almost a full city block. Large trucks came and went all day, carrying grain in and processed food out. The building hummed with the sound of machinery working around the clock. Jake and Lisa entered through the main office entrance. The lobby was simple and clean, with pictures of farming equipment on the walls. A receptionist sat behind a desk, answering calls and scheduling deliveries. She smiled and waved as they walked past. They took an elevator to the 2nd floor, where the administrative offices were located. Jake's office was at the end of the hall. It had a big window that looked out over the fields and a desk covered with farming reports and shipping schedules. Anyone who looked at it would see exactly what they expected to see in a farming settlement. Administrator's office. Lisa went to her own office across the hall. Her window faced the other direction, toward the residential area of New Eden. She could see children walking to school and people working in their small gardens. It all looked so peaceful and normal But Lisa knew that beneath the grain processing plant, there were levels that did not appear on any public building plans. She knew that the power requirements for the plant were much higher than what would be needed just to process grain. She knew that many of the people walking through the streets were not really farmers or shop owners or teachers. Jake sat at his desk and opened his computer. He checked the daily reports from all the different departments. The farming reports looked normal. The shipping schedules looked normal. The personnel reports looked normal. Everything was exactly as it should be for a quiet farming settlement. At 10 o'clock, Jake had a meeting with the department heads. They gathered in the conference room on the second floor. There was Bill Henderson from the farming operations, Mary Johnson from the shipping department, and Tom Wilson from maintenance. They discussed crop yields, equipment repairs, and shipping schedules. It was the same kind of meeting that happened every week in farming settlements across the galaxy. But when the meeting ended and the department heads left, Jake did not go back to his office. Instead, he walked to the end of the hall and pressed his hand against what looked like a blank wall. A hidden door opened, revealing an elevator that did not appear on any building plans. The elevator went down, past the basement level, past the sub-basement, to levels that officially did not exist. When the doors opened, Jake stepped into a very different world. The walls were metal instead of wood. The lights were bright and harsh. The air hummed with the sound of powerful computers and electronic equipment. A man in a military uniform was waiting for him. "Good morning, General Martinez," the man said. "We have new intelligence reports from the outer systems." Jake nodded. His friendly farmer expression was gone, replaced by something much more serious. "What's the situation, Colonel?" "The Zephyrian and Altarian fleets are moving closer to human space. Our long-range sensors show major fleet movements in both empires. Intelligence suggests they may be preparing for a joint operation." Jake looked at the tactical displays on the walls. Red dots showed enemy ship positions. Blue dots showed human settlements and defense positions. The war between the two alien empires had been going on for 3 years, and now it looked like they might be turning their attention to human space. "How much time do we have?" Jake asked. "Unknown, but we should be ready." Above them, the people of New Eden continued their daily routines, unaware that their quiet farming settlement was about to become the center of something much bigger. 3 days after the meeting in the underground command center, Jake Martinez stood in his grain processing plant office, but his mind was far from farming reports. The window showed workers moving through the fields as usual, but Jake knew that half of those workers were actually soldiers in disguise. They had been training for this moment for years. Lisa Thompson knocked on his door and entered without waiting for an answer. She looked like any other agricultural manager in her symbol. Work clothes, but Jake could see the tension in her eyes. "The morning reports are ready," she said, sitting down across from his desk. To anyone watching, they looked like two farming administrators discussing crop schedules. "The eastern fields show very interesting growth patterns." Jake understood. The code, the eastern fields were where they kept their long-range sensors. What kind of growth patterns? The kind that suggests we might have visitors soon. Maybe within the next few days. Lisa opened her tablet and showed him what looked like soil analysis reports. The numbers actually showed alien fleet movements getting closer to human space. Jake nodded and made notes on his own tablet. "Have you talked to Dr. Foster about the soil conditions?" "She's in the processing plant right now, checking the equipment. Everything needs to be ready for the big harvest." Lisa's voice was calm, but Jake could hear the underlying worry. Down in the underground levels, Dr. Amy Foster was not checking grain processing equipment. She was running final tests on weapon systems that had taken 10 years to build and install. The massive machines hidden beneath New Eden could generate more power than most space stations. They had been designed to look like grain processing equipment from the outside, but their real purpose was very different. Amy wore a white lab coat that made her look like a food scientist. Her team of 20 technicians looked like plant workers. They moved through the underground chambers, checking computer systems and power generators. Everything had to work perfectly when the time came. "How are the power levels?" Amy asked her. Assistant Kevin Brooks. "All systems are at full capacity. The fusion reactors are running smoothly. The capacitor banks are charged and ready." Kevin checked his tablet. "The cooling systems are working well. We can maintain full power for at least 6 hours without any problems." Amy nodded. 6 hours should be more than enough time. According to their intelligence reports, most space battles lasted less than an hour. The aliens had powerful ships, but they were used to fighting each other, not humans. In another part of the underground complex, Captain Ryan Bell was briefing his team. They sat in a room that looked like a maintenance workshop. Tools and spare parts lined the walls. But the men and women listening to Ryan were not maintenance workers. They were some of the best pilots and tactical officers in the Earth defense force. "Remember, we need to maintain our cover until the very last moment," Ryan said. "The aliens think we're just farmers. That's our biggest advantage. They won't expect any real resistance from a farming settlement." Lieutenant Sam Turner raised his hand. "What about the civilians? The real farmers and their families?" "They'll be moved to the emergency shelters as soon as we get the final alert. The shelters are designed to look like root cellars and grain. Storage areas. The aliens won't find them." Ryan looked around the room. "Any other questions?" Sergeant Kate Rodriguez spoke up. "What if the aliens try to land troops instead of just attacking from space?" "We're ready for that too. The defensive systems around the settlement can handle ground forces. Remember, we've been preparing for this for 12 years. We know these fields and buildings better than anyone." Above ground, the people of New Eden continued their normal routines. Children went to school. Adults worked in the fields and shops. But many of them had been quietly told about the emergency plans. They knew that if the alarm sounded, they needed to get to the shelters quickly and quietly. Mrs. Kelly, who ran the general store, was actually a former military communications officer. Dr. Brown, who worked in the medical center, had been a combat medic. The school teacher, Miss Parker, was an intelligence analyst. Half the population of New Eden had military backgrounds, but they had been living as farmers for so long that even they sometimes forgot their real identities. Jake spent the afternoon walking through the settlement, checking on preparations. He visited the school where Miss Parker was teaching a science lesson to her students. The lesson was about plant growth, but Jake knew that Miss Parker was actually reviewing tactical communication protocols with the older students who would help with the emergency procedures. He stopped by the medical center, where Dr. Brown was organizing supplies. The medical center looked like a typical small-town clinic, but it had enough equipment and supplies to handle battlefield injuries. Dr. Brown had been quietly preparing for weeks. "How are we doing, Doctor?" Jake asked. "Ready for anything." Emergency medical supplies are in place. The surgical equipment is tested and ready. I've reviewed the evacuation procedures with my staff." Dr. Brown looked tired but determined. "I just hope we don't need to use any of it." Jake nodded. "So do I. But if we do, we'll be ready." That evening, Jake received another intelligence update in the underground command center. The news was not good. Both alien fleets were moving toward human space faster than expected. The Zephyrians and Altarians had been fighting each other for 3 years, but intelligence suggested they might be planning to work together to attack human settlements. "They think we're weak," Colonel Harris said, pointing to the tactical display. "They've been watching our settlements for months. All they see are farmers and small towns. They have no idea what we've actually built here. Jake studied the display. Red dots showed alien ships getting closer. Blue dots showed human settlements and hidden defense positions. New Eden was not the only farming settlement with secrets. Across human space, dozens of similar settlements were preparing for the same kind of battle. "How long do we have?" Jake asked. "Maybe 2 days, maybe less. The outer sensor networks show both fleets moving in formation. They're not trying to hide their movements anymore." Jake made his decision. "Send the alert to all department heads. Begin final preparations. And activate the civilian evacuation protocols. I want every real farmer and their family in the shelters within 12 hours. As Jake returned to his office above ground, he looked out at the peaceful fields of New Eden one last time. Tomorrow, this quiet farming settlement would become a battlefield. The aliens thought they were attacking defenseless farmers. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The morning sky over New Eden was clear and blue when the first alien ships appeared. Jake Martinez stood in his office window, watching the dark shapes grow larger as they descended through the atmosphere. His hands were steady, but his heart was beating fast. This was the moment they had been preparing for. Lisa Thompson rushed into his office, her face pale but determined. "They're here, both fleets. The sensors count 47 ships total." Jake nodded. "Are the civilians in the shelters?" "All accounted for. Every real farmer and their family is safe underground. The shelter doors are sealed and camouflaged." Lisa looked out the window at the approaching ships. "The aliens will only see military personnel now, but they'll think we're all farmers." The alien ships were massive, much larger than anything humans had ever built. They moved slowly through the sky, their hulls gleaming in the sunlight. Jake could see weapon ports along their sides and knew that each ship carried enough firepower to destroy a small city dot down in the underground command center. Colonel Harris was coordinating with the other hidden settlements. "All defensive positions. Report ready. New Eden, you are primary target. Phoenix Valley and River Bend settlements are standing by to assist if needed." Jake took the elevator down to the command center. The peaceful farm administrator was gone, replaced by General Martinez, one of the most experienced military commanders in the Earth Defense Force. His casual clothes had been replaced by a crisp military uniform. "Status report," Jake said as he entered the command center. 47 ships in 2 distinct formations. 23 Zephyrian vessels, 24 Alterian vessels. They're maintaining a cautious distance from each other, but they're clearly working together. Colonel Harris pointed to the main display. "They're setting up a standard occupation formation around the settlement." Dr. Amy Foster's voice came over the communication system from the weapons control room. "All systems are ready, General. Power levels at maximum. We can fire on your command. Hold position, Doctor. Let's see what they want first." Jake studied the tactical display. The alien ships were positioning themselves in a circle around New Eden, with the 2 fleets staying on opposite sides of the settlement. Captain Ryan Bell reported from the pilot-ready room. "All aircraft are prepared for launch. The hangar doors are ready to open on your signal." "Understood, Captain." "Stay ready, but stay hidden." The largest alien ship descended until it hovered directly over the center of New Eden. Jake could see landing craft being prepared on its lower deck. Similar preparations were happening on ships from both fleets. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer announced. "It's coming from both fleets simultaneously." "Put it on screen, Jake." Ordered. The main display showed 2 alien faces side by side. One was reptilian with golden scales and bright yellow eyes. The other was more insect-like, with multiple eyes and clicking mandibles. Both looked arrogant and confident. "I am War Leader Thakmer of the Zephyrian Empire," the reptilian alien said in heavily accented English. I am Fleet Prime Zindari of the Altarian Federation. The insect-like alien added. Jake activated the communication system. He made sure his voice sounded nervous and frightened, like a simple farmer who had never seen aliens before. This is Jake Martinez, administrator of New Eden Farming Settlement. We're just farmers here. We don't want any trouble. War leader Thakmer made a sound that might have been laughter. Your species has been lucky to avoid the war between our empires. That luck has ended. This system and all human settlements will be divided between our forces. Fleet Prime Zindari's mandibles clicked rapidly. Your settlement will provide food and workers for our war effort. Resistance is pointless. Your primitive technology cannot threaten our warships. Jake made his voice shake slightly. We're not soldiers. We're just farmers. We grow food and raise families. We don't have any weapons or defenses. That is wise, Thakmer said. Submit peacefully, and you will be treated well as servants of the Empire. The Federation also offers protection. To cooperative humans, Zindari added, your crops will feed our warriors. Your people will work in our factories. Jake looked around the command center. Every person there was a trained soldier, but the aliens saw only a frightened farmer. What do you want us to do? You will prepare your people for integration into our societies, Thakmer announced. The western half of your settlement will serve the Zephyrian Empire. The eastern half will serve the Altarian Federation. We are generous, Zindari said. We give you 1 hour to prepare. Gather your people in the main square. Bring records of your population and resources. 1 hour, Thakmer repeated. Then we will land and begin the integration process. Do not attempt to flee. Our ships will destroy any vessels trying to escape. The transmission ended, leaving Jake staring at a blank screen. Around him, the command center was completely silent. Then Colonel Harris spoke quietly. They're dividing us up like property. They don't even see us as people. Jake turned to face his officers. His nervous farmer act was completely gone now. They think we're helpless. They think we're primitive. They're about to learn how wrong they are. Lisa Thompson's voice came over the communication system from her position above ground. General, I'm maintaining the administrator cover. Some of the alien landing craft are preparing to descend. They're sending down survey teams to catalog our resources. Let them come, Jake said. Dr. Foster, what's the status of our primary systems? All weapons are charged and ready. The moment those hangar doors open, we can engage both fleets simultaneously. Captain Bell, are your pilots ready? Ready and waiting, General. We've been dreaming of this moment for years. Jake looked at the countdown timer on the main display. 53 minutes until the alien ultimatum expired. 53 minutes until the peaceful farming settlement of New Eden would reveal its true nature. All personnel, this is General Martinez. We have 53 minutes before the aliens expect us to surrender. They think we're defenseless farmers. They think we're primitive and weak. They're about to discover that appearances can be deceiving. He paused, looking around the command center at the faces of his officers. These men and women had spent 12 years pretending to be farmers, waiting for this moment. Today, we show the galaxy that humans are not victims. We are not servants. We are not weak. Today, we show them what farmers can do when they've had enough. Above ground, alien landing craft began descending toward New Eden. Their crews were confident and relaxed, expecting to find frightened farmers ready to surrender. They had no idea that beneath the grain processing plant, weapon systems more powerful than anything they had ever seen were preparing to fire. The countdown continued. 50 minutes, 49 minutes, 48 minutes. The storm was about to break. 30 minutes remained on the alien countdown when Jake Martinez made his decision. He stood in the underground command center, watching the tactical display as alien landing craft continued to descend toward New Eden. The time for pretending was almost over. Dr. Foster, begin primary activation sequence. Jake ordered into his headset. Acknowledged, General. Beginning activation now. Above ground, Lisa Thompson stood in the main square of New Eden, surrounded by what looked like frightened farmers and townspeople. But every person there was actually a trained soldier. They had gathered as the aliens requested, but not for the reasons the aliens expected. The first sign of change came from the grain processing plant. A deep humming sound began to emerge from the building, growing louder by the second. The aliens, in their landing craft, noticed the sound, but dismissed it as farming equipment. War Leader Thakmer's voice crackled over the communication system from his ship. Human Administrator, why have you not brought your population records? You have. 28 minutes remaining. Lisa activated her communicator, making her voice sound nervous and confused. We're gathering everything now. The files are in different buildings. We need a few more minutes. You test our patience, Fleet Prime Zindari added. Our landing. Teams report unusual power readings from your processing facility. Explain this. It's just our grain processing equipment, Lisa replied. We've been working extra shifts to prepare food stores for you. But even as she spoke, the changes were becoming impossible to hide. The humming from the grain processing plant grew much louder. The ground began to vibrate slightly. Some of the alien landing craft crews were starting to look worried. Down in the underground command center, Dr. Amy Foster watched her control panels as massive systems came online. General, primary power systems are at full capacity. Defensive grid is activating. Weapons platforms are coming online. The grain processing plant began to transform. What had looked like ordinary grain storage silos started to split open along hidden seams. Massive blast doors that had been disguised as silo walls retracted with a grinding sound of metal on metal. The aliens in their landing craft suddenly found themselves looking at something very different from what they had expected. What is happening? Thakmer demanded over the communication system. Those structures are not grain storage facilities. Jake decided it was time to drop the pretense. When he spoke again, his voice was no longer that of a frightened farmer. It was the voice of a military commander who had been waiting 12 years for this moment. You're absolutely right, War Leader. They're not grain storage facilities. They never were. The largest silo completed its transformation, revealing a massive weapons platform that rose high above the settlement. Its surface was covered with weapon ports and sensor arrays that had been completely invisible when the structure was disguised as a grain silo. Other buildings around New Eden began to change as well. The school building's roof split open, revealing missile launchers. The medical center's walls retracted to show defensive gun positions. Even the small houses throughout the settlement began to transform, their facades falling away to reveal fortified positions and weapon emplacements. Impossible. Zendari's voice was filled with shock. Our intelligence reports showed only primitive farming equipment. Your intelligence reports showed exactly what we wanted them to show, Jake replied. You've been watching us for months, cataloging us as a helpless farming settlement. You saw exactly what we wanted you to see. Captain Ryan Bell's voice came over the internal communication system. General, hangar doors are opening. All pilots report ready for launch. What had appeared to be irrigation ponds throughout the settlement suddenly drained, revealing hidden aircraft hangars. Sleek fighter craft began rising from underground launch bays, their engines glowing as they prepared for combat. The aliens in their landing craft found themselves caught between the settlement and their own ships. They had expected to land among defenseless farmers. Instead, They were trapped in a killing field between heavily armed positions. "This is a trick," Thakmer snarled. "You are still primitives. Your weapons cannot threaten our warships." "Let me show you how primitive we are," Jake said calmly. Dr. Foster's voice came over the communication system. "General, all primary weapons are charged and ready. Targeting systems have locks on 47 enemy vessels." "You have been deceived," Jake announced to both alien fleets. "New Eden is not a farming settlement. It never was. It's a military installation designed specifically to defend against threats like you." The truth was even more shocking than the aliens could have imagined. The entire settlement had been built as a fortress. Every building, every road, every field had been designed with defense in mind. The massive power requirements that had been explained as grain processing equipment were actually for weapon systems that could challenge the largest warships. "The Earth Defense Force has been watching your war for 3 years, Jake continued. "We studied your tactics, your weapons, your ships. We knew that eventually you would turn your attention to human space. We've been preparing for this moment." Lisa Thompson's voice came from above ground. "General, the civilian evacuation is complete. All real farmers and their families are in the deep shelters. We have confirmation that similar activations are taking place at Phoenix Valley and Riverbend settlements." Jake smiled grimly. "Did you hear that, War Leader? Fleet Prime? New Eden isn't the only farming settlement with secrets. Every human colony in this sector has been preparing for you." The aliens were beginning to realize the scope of their mistake. They had assumed humans were weak and primitive. They had planned to divide human space between their empires like it was unoccupied territory. Instead, they had walked into a carefully prepared trap. "This is impossible," Zindari repeated. "Your species lacks the technology for such weapons." "You're right," Jake admitted. "We don't have your advanced technology. But we have something you don't have. We have patience. We have planning. And we have the ability to work together for a common goal." The transformation of New Eden was complete. Where there had been a peaceful farming settlement, there was now a fortress that could rival any military installation in the galaxy. Weapon platforms rose from hidden positions. Fighter craft circled overhead. Defensive shields shimmered into existence around key structures. "You wanted to divide us up like property," Jake said. "You wanted to use us as servants and slaves. You thought we were weak and defenseless. You were wrong." The countdown timer showed 15 minutes remaining until the alien ultimatum expired. But the tables had turned completely. The aliens were no longer the ones giving ultimatums. "Now, let me give you an ultimatum," Jake announced. "You have 1 minute to begin withdrawing your forces from human space. If you do not comply, we will show you what these primitive farmers can really do." In the landing craft scattered around New Eden, alien soldiers stared in shock at the fortress that had materialized around them. Above them, their fleet commanders struggled to understand how they had been so completely deceived. The mask had fallen, the trap was sprung, and the real battle was about to begin. The battle began at exactly 1432 local time, when War Leader Thakmer made his fatal mistake. Instead of retreating as Jake had suggested, the Zephyrian commander opened fire on the transformed settlement. His particle beams struck the defensive shields around New Eden, creating brilliant flashes of light that could be seen from orbit. "So much for diplomacy," Jake said calmly in the underground command center. "Dr. Foster, you are cleared to engage. Show them what we've built." "With pleasure, General," Amy Foster replied from the weapons control room. The largest weapon platform, disguised as a grain silo just minutes before, rotated toward the Zephyrian flagship. When it fired, the beam of pure energy was so bright that it lit up the entire settlement like a second sun. The beam struck Thakmer's ship directly in the center, punching through its shields and armor like they were made of paper. The massive Zephyrian warship, which had seemed so threatening just moments before, exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen across the continent. Pieces of burning metal rained down onto the fields around New Eden. "Target destroyed," Dr. Foster reported. "All primary weapons are functioning perfectly." The destruction of their flagship sent shockwaves through both alien fleets. Fleet Prime. Zindari immediately ordered his ships to attack, but Jake had been expecting this reaction. The humans had spent 3 years studying how the aliens fought each other, and they knew exactly how to use that knowledge. "Captain Bell, launch all fighters." "Execute Plan 7, Jake ordered. "Understood, General. All squadrons launching now." Hidden hangars throughout New Eden opened like blooming flowers. Sleek human fighter craft shot into the sky, their engines leading trails of blue fire. But instead of attacking both alien fleets equally, they had a more clever strategy. Lieutenant Sam Turner led the first squadron directly toward the Altarian ships, firing as they approached. But their weapons were not set to maximum power. They were designed to damage, not destroy. "What are they doing?" Colonel Harris asked, watching the tactical display. "Watch and learn," Jake replied with a grin. The human fighters struck several Altarian ships, causing visible damage but not destroying them. The Altarian ships immediately returned fire, their weapons blazing as they tried to shoot down the attacking fighters. But Sam Turner and his pilots were not where the aliens expected them to be. They had used the Altarian ships as cover, positioning themselves so that when the aliens fired back, their weapons struck the Zephyrian ships instead. "Brilliant," Colonel Harris breathed as he watched the display. "We're making them shoot each other." The Zephyrian ships, thinking they were under attack from the Altarians, immediately fired back. Within seconds, the 2 alien fleets were shooting at each other instead of the human settlement. 3 years of war had made them suspicious and quick to fight. The humans had turned that against them. Sergeant Kate Rodriguez coordinated the ground-based defenses as alien landing craft tried to reach the settlement. The craft that had been circling New Eden suddenly found themselves under attack from weapons they had not even known existed. "Ground defense systems are online," Kate reported. "Enemy landing craft are taking heavy damage." Hidden gun positions throughout the settlement opened fire on the alien landing craft. What had looked like farming equipment revealed itself to be sophisticated weapons systems. Irrigation pipes became missile launchers. Farm buildings became fortified gun positions. One by one, the alien landing craft were destroyed or forced to retreat. The alien soldiers who had expected to find frightened farmers instead found themselves facing trained human soldiers who knew every inch of the battlefield. Dr. Foster's weapons platforms continued to fire at both alien fleets. Each shot was carefully aimed to cause maximum damage while making it look like the attacks were coming from the opposing fleet. The aliens, already suspicious of each other after 3 years of war, fell for the deception completely. "Zephyrian flagship down," Amy reported. "Altarian heavy cruiser destroyed. 2 Zephyrian destroyers heavily damaged." The space battle was turning into complete chaos. The 2 alien fleets, which had been working together just minutes before, were now fighting each other as much as they were fighting the humans. Ships from both sides were exploding or retreating in confusion. Captain Ryan Bell led his fighter. Squadrons in complex attack patterns that made the most of the confusion. His pilots would attack a Zephyrian ship, then immediately fly toward an Altarian ship, making it look like the attack had come from the Altarians. "This is incredible," Ryan reported over the communication system. "They're so busy fighting each other that they've almost forgotten about us." Jake watched the tactical display with satisfaction. The plan was working perfectly. Instead of facing 2 allied fleets, The humans had turned the aliens against each other. The Zephyrians and Altarians were destroying each other's ships, while the human forces picked off the survivors. General, we're receiving surrender signals from multiple alien vessels, the communications officer reported. Ignore them, Jake ordered. They came here to divide us up like property. They wanted to use us as slaves. They don't get to surrender now that they're losing. The battle continued with devastating effectiveness. Human weapons, designed specifically to fight against alien technology, proved to be more effective than anyone had hoped. The aliens had been fighting each other for 3 years, and their ships showed the wear and damage of constant warfare. The humans, on the other hand, had been preparing for this single battle for over a decade. Status report, Jake called out. Zephyrian fleet is down to 8 operational ships, Colonel Harris reported. Altarian fleet has 12 ships still fighting. Most of the remainder are either destroyed or severely damaged. And our casualties? Minor damage to 2 fighter squadrons. No serious injuries reported. The defensive shields are holding perfectly. Jake could hardly believe it. They had faced 2 of the most powerful fleets in the galaxy, and they were winning decisively. The aliens' arrogance and their tendency to fight each other had made them vulnerable to human tactics. General, we're detecting massive explosions in the alien formation, Dr. Foster reported. It looks like an Altarian ship just rammed a Zephyrian cruiser. Both ships are destroyed. The alien fleets were tearing each other apart. What had started as a coordinated attack on a farming settlement had become a chaotic battle where the aliens were doing most of the work of destroying themselves. Time elapsed since the battle began? Jake asked. 7 minutes, 38 seconds, Colonel Harris replied. Jake smiled. They had been preparing for this battle for 12 years. The aliens had expected it to be over in minutes, with the humans surrendering immediately. Instead, the humans were winning a complete victory in less than 10 minutes. The thunder of battle continued to echo across New Eden as the alien fleets destroyed each other in confusion and rage. At exactly 14:41 local time, 9 minutes after the battle had begun, the last Zephyrian ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. War leader Thakmer's entire fleet was gone, destroyed by a combination of human weapons and Altarian fire. The Altarian fleet had suffered almost as badly, with only 3 ships still capable of fighting. Jake Martinez stood in the underground command center, watching the tactical display as the remaining Altarian ships tried desperately to escape. Their formations were broken, their commanders were dead, and their will to fight was completely gone. Fleet Prime Zindari is trying to send a message, the communications officer reported. Put him on screen, Jake ordered. The insect-like alien appeared on the main display, but he looked very different from the arrogant commander who had demanded human surrender just minutes before. His multiple eyes showed fear and confusion. His mandibles clicked rapidly in what Jake recognized as a sign of extreme stress. Human commander, Zindari said, his voice shaking. We request immediate ceasefire. We surrender. We will withdraw from human space immediately. Jake leaned back in his chair, considering his response. Around him, the command center was completely quiet. Everyone was waiting to see what he would say to the alien who had planned to enslave them. Fleet Prime, Jake said finally, 9 minutes ago, you told me that resistance was pointless. You said that our primitive technology could not threaten your warships. You wanted to divide my people up like property. We were wrong, Zindari admitted. We underestimated your capabilities. We offer full withdrawal and compensation for any damages. Compensation? Jake's voice was cold. You came here planning to make us slaves. You thought we were weak and helpless. What compensation could you possibly offer for that? Dr. Amy Foster's voice came over the internal communication system. General, weapons are still locked on the remaining Altarian ships. We can finish them in 30 seconds. Jake nodded, but continued talking to Zingari. Here's what's going to happen, Fleet Prime. You're going to take your 3 remaining ships and return to Altarian space. You're going to tell your government exactly what happened here. You're going to explain that humans are not weak farmers who can be conquered. Yes, we will do this, Zingari said quickly. But that's not all, Jake continued. You're also going to send a message to every government, every military force, every pirate group in this part of the galaxy. You're going to tell them that human space is defended. You're going to tell them what happened to 2 of the most powerful fleets in the galaxy when they tried to attack a single human settlement. The alien commander nodded frantically. We will send this message immediately. Good, because if we ever see Altarian ships in human space again, there won't be any warnings. There won't be any surrender offers. We'll simply destroy you. Jake's voice was completely calm, which somehow made the threat even more frightening. The transmission ended, and Jake watched as the 3 surviving Altarian ships limped away from New Eden. Their engines were damaged, their hulls were scarred, and their formations were broken. It would take them weeks to reach home, assuming they made it at all. Status report, Jake called out. Colonel Harris checked his displays. All alien forces have been destroyed or have fled the system. No human casualties. Minor damage to fighter. Squadron 3, but all pilots are safe. The defensive systems performed perfectly. And our other settlements? Phoenix Valley and River Bend report similar results. The alien scouting forces sent to those locations have been destroyed. No human settlements were attacked or damaged. Jake stood up and walked to the main display, which now showed empty space where 2 powerful alien fleets had been just minutes before. Pieces of wreckage were scattered across a wide area, but there were no intact alien ships left in the system. Open. A communication channel to all Earth Defense Force installations, Jake ordered. Channel open, General. This is General Martinez at New Eden. Operation Harvest Moon is complete. Both alien fleets have been neutralized. Human space remains secure. The masquerade is over. Cheers erupted from communication channels across human space. For 12 years, thousands of people had pretended to be farmers while preparing for this moment. Now they could finally drop their disguises and reveal what they had really built. Lisa Thompson entered the command center, still wearing her simple farming clothes, but now carrying a military tablet. General, all civilian families are reporting safe. No injuries in the emergency shelters. The children are asking when they can come out and see what happened. Jake smiled for the first time since the battle began. Tell them they can come out. No. Tell them the bad men are gone and won't be coming back. Dr. Amy Foster appeared at Jake's side, her white lab coat replaced by a military uniform. General, the weapon systems performed even better than we hoped. Power consumption was only 60% of capacity. We could have handled twice as many ships. Let's hope we never have to find out, Jake replied. But even as he said it, he knew that word of this battle would spread across the galaxy. Other species would hear about the farming settlement that destroyed 2 fleets in 9 minutes. They would be more careful about attacking humans in the future. Captain Ryan Bell landed his fighter in one of the hidden hangars and made his way to the command center. His helmet was under his arm, and his face showed the satisfaction of a job well done. All pilots accounted for, General. The aliens never knew what hit them. Their tactics were designed for fighting each other, not for fighting us. Jake nodded. That was the key to everything. We studied their war for 3 years. We learned how they thought, how they fought, how they reacted under pressure. We used all of that against them. Lieutenant Sam Turner and Sergeant Kate Rodriguez joined the group in the command center. They had spent 12 years pretending to be farmers, and now they could finally be soldiers again. What happens now, General? Kate asked. Jake looked around at his officers, then at the tactical display showing the debris of the alien fleets. Now we go back to farming. The real farmers will come out of the shelters and return to their fields. We'll rebuild the disguises and go back to looking like a peaceful settlement. But everyone will know the truth now, Sam pointed out. Exactly, Jake said with a grin. Every species in the galaxy will know that human farmers are not to be underestimated. They'll know that our settlements are not defenseless targets. They'll know that if they attack humans, they'll face consequences they never expected. Above ground, the people of New Eden began emerging from their shelters. Children ran through the fields, looking up at the sky where alien ships had been. Just minutes before, adults began the work of restoring their farming equipment disguises and cleaning up the debris from the battle dot to anyone watching from space. New Eden would soon look like a peaceful farming settlement again. But now the galaxy knew the truth. Humans were not weak. They were not primitive. And they were definitely not defenseless. The war between the Zephyrians and Altarians was over, ended not by victory for either side, but by their complete defeat, at the hands of people they had dismissed as simple farmers. The message would spread across the galaxy. Humans might look peaceful, but appearances could be very deceiving indeed.